Hey guys, slightly different video from us today as it's a little bit more practical rather than just being inside of some software. And the reason for that is we've kindly been sent one of these Stepcraft CNC machines that you can see on my screen here. Not quite as big as this, we've got the 420 version, so it's a little bit smaller with a smaller bed. But this is a great little machine because we can now post straight out of Fusion into a machine that we've got in the workshop downstairs. And start getting some results. So what we thought that we'd do is show you how quickly we can get to that point from Fusion. So all I'm going to do is open up a very simple design here that I've been putting together, and I'll just talk you through what we have on the design and how we've set up the toolpaths. And then we'll physically go downstairs, get the stock set up on the machine, and get it cut. So very simple. Little shape. This is just our logo, so to speak, the icon from our logo. And what we're going to do is just going to cut this out. Really simple contours. I've put some curvature on the top there. So model-wise, it's really simple. Started off with a very, very basic sketch. Let's just turn on my sketches. And then from that sketch, we then obviously extruded up the main bulk. We've then sketched on the side over here. Which is some simple curvature, and then we've used that to go ahead and produce this surface with an extruded surface, and then I've used that surface, if we just come and turn that surface on, there we go, and we've used that surface then to trim down the body using the split command, and then we've just turned off the top and the surface, giving us what's left, which is this second here. And then all we've done is added this fillet around the outside and just filleted those sharp edges to give us this result. So really simple, relatively small, so I think we're about 50mm square. Let's just double check that. Yeah, so we're about 50mm square and about 10mm high in the highest point. So really simple model. And then what we've done with that is we've gone over into the manufacturing environment inside of Fusion. And we've modelled up our stock. So we've got a small piece of wood, which is approximately 110mm by 80. So I've just modelled that stock up as is in the setup. So in there, I've gone to my stock and I've typed in 110 by 80, and it's around about 14.2mm thick. And basically, I've just put in at the bottom of that stock, I've put in my model. On that setup, we've left pretty much everything else here as default. We've configured our axis to match what we want on the machine, and then we have this component, and we've gone through and set it up. I'll talk through the setup step by step. First of all, I wanted to face this off, so what that's going to do is it's going to take out some material. So I've added a 2D face, and on that face I've just changed some of the configurations. I want to run my spindle, I think it's about 70%. On that machine, on the spindle that we've got, so that's 17,500 RPM. We've got a 3mm bit that's doing the cutting. That's the biggest bit that we've got with this particular machine, so it's a bit on the small side for what we're doing, but for that face, but it works fine. So we're cutting quite fast. The cut rate, however, the machine, it's moving quite slowly. It will do up to, I think, 3,000mm a minute if you need it to, but I've got it cutting quite slowly. The tools I've got are quite cheap, so I want it to cut quite slowly with a high spin rate just to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. I've just played around with the lead in and out and the ramp feed rate just to sort of bring it down a little bit so it's going nice and slowly. And then with that, I've chosen the contour of the shape, and then I've added on an offset. So I've just said that default heights, but with my offset, I want to have an extension on the pass and of the stock by 5mm. And what that means is rather than just getting this kind of shape as a face, when I press OK, this will generate a face that's much bigger. That makes sure that when I come to cutting around this and getting some clearance later, so I can get the tool holder down into this stock, I won't have any issues with collisions. So this is just going to face down pretty much to the top here of my component. It's going to leave a little bit there left, which is fine because I'm going to be finishing this off later, but this is literally there just to face down into the stock. I've then got three contours. The reason I've gone for three contours is, again, I want to make sure there's clearance. It's quite a small drill bit that we've got on there, or tool, should I say. So when we get lower down into here, you're quite close to A, the area of the tool that doesn't have any cutting blades on it, and B, the tool holder here. And I really want to make sure that either we're not rubbing at the top of the tool or making any collisions. So all I've done is a simple contour around the innermost section where it will ramp down, meaning it will start quite high and then ramp down into the contour. Again, the same cutting configuration as I got before. Again, it's going down in 1.5mm increments, so quite shallow at a time, but it gives us a really nice finish. And what that will do is it will give us this ramped contour, which starts quite high and then gradually ramps down before going down at 1.5mm increments. We don't want that to go down too far yet. We'll do a final cut later on, but we're just coming down sort of this high. And then I do the same again, but slightly offset. This is really just to clear some of the material away that's in these gaps here. Again, I don't want to get to a point where I've left, 4 or 5 mil of material which we come and collide with later. So I'd rather get rid of it all, and I thought that was the easiest and the quickest way to do it with this. So we've got a middle one and then a final outer one that just gets rid of the very outside. So they're really straightforward. And then once we've got to that point, we can then start doing some cool things like adaptive clearing. Our adaptive clearing is really cool. It will get rid of a lot of material very quickly, and it will do that quite nicely for us. It's not going to follow all 3 axes on the curve. It will ramp it. So again, same settings as before, maximum depth of 1.5mm at a time, nice high spindle speed and a relatively slow cutting rate. All we've done is we've said to take the top to the top of the model. So we're going to come down and treat that as the top and then treat the flat here as the bottom, which basically means it's going to clear this area of material as best it can. Because it's not a full 3D movement, it is only working as a stepped finish. What we'll get is an area of flat, an area of flat, an area of flat, and it will almost step in increments, and again at a maximum depth of 1.5mm at a time due to my configurations, which from a toolpath perspective looks like this. I've not played too much with my my rapids, stay down rates and things like that. I've kind of left it quite default, but what this will do is it will go and clear away material and get ready for my final finish. What you can see here is it's again still leaving quite a lot of stock, so I think I've got it on 0.25 or 0.5 of stock to leave there, which will then go and clean up towards the end of this routine, which will then be done with the parallel finish. The parallel finish is really nice, so this will work curved, so it will follow the curvature on that machine, and it will come down and allow us to create a nice curved finish on that component. Looking at what we've got, you make 2 selections. So from a geometry perspective, for example, we can choose to pick up a silhouette, and it will go and look and work over that silhouette and follow the geometry. The heights, again, I've kind of got set as follows. We've got a bottom and a top. We've pretty much kept everything in there as default, but we do have 2 positions as entry, so over here and over here. And what that'll do is it will go away and it will develop my my parallel pass, and that will follow that. Now I am just looking at my toolpath there, and it seems a little bit far away at the bottom here, so I'm not overly pleased with that. So I will repost this out again before I go downstairs, just to make sure that this gap is much smaller, because that won't get rid of the steps that I had earlier. So we'll fix that. And finally what will happen is this final contour, where we come into the machine, come into the stock, gradually get lower and lower and lower without any stock to leave, so it'll be nice and crisp around these edges, and then we'll end up with 4 tabs around the outside of our stock. So if I go ahead and simulate this now, turn off the toolpath, but maybe turn on the stock and go back to the start, we're looking at approximately an hour and a half one time, which isn't too bad. We're running the machine quite slow, but here's our face. It's going to face plenty of stock off to begin with, and once it's faced that, it will go into my 3 contours. Remember, 1 for the inside and then 2 clearance ones, a little bit excessive, but I quite like doing that to make sure that we've got enough room, especially in this area, rather than having to mess around. It takes minutes to do these contours in reality, so I prefer to get all of that additional material out. So here's the two clearances, and then you'll see it taking away the adaptive. You'll see that ramped finish, and then we'll see the parallel come in a second. Here comes the parallel. And then after the parallel, we'll see one final contour, and that contour will go ahead, cut all the way through the stock. And then we'll see these tabs coming up towards the end once it goes through the component, and leave us with our end result. That'll then either just cut out with a knife or pop out, and we'll be left with our finished component, which probably need a little bit of sanding down, but other than that, it should be good to go. So I'm just going to tidy up this parallel finish, and then we'll post it out, and I will start the recording again once we're downstairs. Okay guys, I'm down in the machine room now, aka our training room with a machine at the side of it. So apologies for the probably slightly degraded quality in audio, but I've got Fusion open on the machine that's running the control, and I'm literally going to take my setup and I'm going to post it out. So I'm going to go to post process against that setup, grab my Stepcraft post processor, which is available free of charge through the Fusion post library, and I'm literally just going to post it out. I'll give it a program name and post. I'm going to post that out to my desktop, save the file, and then I'll just minimize Fusion. And for this particular machine, the controller sits on the PC, so hopefully you can see both screens, and if I go ahead and move in the X and the Y and the Z, we have full control over the machine. So we're just going to send the machine home, so 0, 0, 0 in the X, Y and Z. We'll zero the machine at that point, and then we will manually move the machine into position so it's ready to be cut. We're basically going to do that in a couple of ways. So firstly, we're going to reduce the feed rate, probably to about 50% of its maximum speed, and then we're going to jog the machine along so that it's roughly in the center of our stock, and then you'll see me leveling the machine off. Whilst I'm doing that, I've already mounted the stock in position. We've got some extra waste stock underneath which isn't needed, so essentially we can cut all the way through this in relevant parts without affecting the bed of the machine. And these are just the basic clamps that came with the machine. I'm not overly thrilled with them, if I'm completely honest, but we will get some additional ones ordered. They're okay, but they're quite simple. It's just a simple T-slot with a nut, but they do the job. So I've just marked the stock here roughly where I've got plenty of clearance, and I'll move the machine in the X and the Y until it's kind of eyeballed in the right place. I bring it down with the Z, and then when we get close enough we'll just reduce the feed rate significantly so we can get nice and close to that 0 point. So from here I'm just going to reduce my feed rate to 1. And we can get as close as we can to that 0 point on the stock. Once we're roughly there in X and Y, we just have to sort the Z out. So you have to excuse me getting in the way of the camera for a second. That's near enough. A little bit further backwards in the Y, maybe a little bit more. Perfect. And then to level the Z, simplest thing to do is just to grab a little bit of paper on the stock and just bring the Z down with a very small increment until that piece of paper is grabbed by that machine. So I'm going in the smallest increment possible, little bits at a time. I can now feel that that paper is being gripped by the machine, a little bit more, and that paper is now physically captured. So that tool is now on the top of the stock. From there I can say 0 all, so that tells the machine and the controller that this tool in this position is where I want my 0 to be from my Fusion model. I can bring the Z to a safe height, remove my paper, and now we're ready to start cutting. So I'll turn the audio off and put on some
some music or something whilst this is going. But yeah, we can now say that we want to cut this and get working.